Sikkim 365 and Baylor Plus have teamed up to bring Baylor fans the ultimate content bundle. You can sign up now for $17.99 a month, a $5 monthly savings, and get instant access to all premium content on both websites. For more information, visit either sikkim365.com or baylorplus.com today. What's up, Baylor family? Welcome into Inside Baylor Sports, the official daily podcast of Baylor Athletics. It's Thursday, October 24th, and in just a little bit, Grace and I will be joined by Baylor offensive coordinator Jake Spavital to discuss the first 7 games of the season and what he sees from the offensive development throughout those 7 games. But to get started, Grace and I are going to give you our offensive keys to this game against Oklahoma State. We do this every week, just kind of insight of what we view in this matchup. From an offensive standpoint, Baylor's offense versus Oklahoma State's defense. And truly, I think that for both of us, I'm speaking more for myself, but after 59 points against Texas Tech, not that you expect those points to be a common theme every single week for the rest of the season, but it gives you more confidence when we talk about these game picks and what can potentially happen. And you look at the opponents that are upcoming. And Grayson, I'm excited to talk to Coach Spav about the things that they're working on, the performance they had. But in general, I think for me, starting right off the bat, it's the run game against Oklahoma State. It's an area that the run defense for Oklahoma State has struggled. They've had injuries, and everyone that has played this Oklahoma State team has had success running the football. So I'm jumping right into number 1 so you don't steal it from me, but that is it. Run the football, and I guess that's kind of the normal thing for any of these games. If you can run the football, you have a good chance to win. But in this game particular, Baylor found it last week against Tech. They're going to have to find it again this weekend against Oklahoma State.
Right. And, I actually think we should put together our 2 keys to the game, because my actual first one was going to be the quarterback run game. And I'm going to get into that here in a minute. But I think in general, this game sets up very well for Baylor to run the ball effectively and maybe even beyond effectively, because Oklahoma State hasn't just struggled. I mean, they have collapsed as a defense stopping the run, in large part due to injuries. Also, just their linebacker play without Nick Martin has been really, really bad. Safety tackling has been a problem when Trey Rucker hasn't been there. So it's like every level of the defense has had some issues, whether it's due to injury or just poor play. And I don't think they're going to get all those guys back. They might get Rucker back, which would really help them in the run game. But in general, I think they just have a bunch of holes. And to kind of dive into that even more, in their 5 games versus Power 4 competition, they've given up 232 yards, 249 yards, 300 yards, 389 yards, and then 255 yards. I mean, they're just hemorrhaging yards in the run game. And the thing that they all have in common is a quarterback has ran for at least 40 yards on them in all 5 of those games. You look at Taylon Green at Arkansas, 61 yards. Isaac Wilson at Utah, 41 yards. Avery Johnson, 60 yards at K-State. Garrett Green, 86 yards at West Virginia, and then Jake Retzlaff last week with 81 yards for BYU. And I tell you all these numbers, the 200-plus yard games, and it just sets up very well for me to just sit back and say, the expectation should kind of be that Baylor has 200 rushing yards in this game.
Yeah, I mean, if they get it, they're going to have a good chance to win this football game. And I think if you look back through Baylor's last couple of games, Sawyer Robertson hasn't ran the football much. And I think if you can get to the point that you're running the football without having to run him, great. But if you have the opportunity to run him, then it's like take advantage of it. If they're going to, go into Baylor into this game, we're going to shut down the run game first and foremost. Well, Sawyer might have some opportunities because they're going to want to shut down Bryson Washington and the running backs. But I'm with you, man. And then on the flip side to that, yeah, they're struggling against the run, but they're also giving up 8.5 yards per pass against Power 5 competition. That's 15th in the Big 12. I'm not sure where it ranks nationally, but it's just – and I listened to Mike Gundy's press conference yesterday, and someone asked him, where do you think this team is progression-wise? He's like, man, progress-wise, one, they're actually really good. They've improved, he felt like. And I thought that was really interesting. So he said, we're judging this from week to week. And he said, we're going to get back guys that are healthy and the team knows and they're good spirits and everything. But his attitude was almost like, we just have to get better. And not oh, we're playing bad. And we can play better. It's almost like we're kind of meeting our expectations. And I thought that was really telling, was really interesting, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. And, in a lot of ways, I think Mike Gundy, he is going to have this team ready to play, but I think he understands that some of the issues that they have are not necessarily fixable immediately. Like there's not one, silver bullet that's going to change the outlook of their rush defense. They've just struggled there. And you throw in injuries on top of that, and it makes it worse. That doesn't mean those guys aren't going to play hard. And that's where Baylor's effort and energy and mindset for a homecoming game at home is going to have to come out. And you hope that the offensive line has great confidence in this game after that Texas Tech game and goes out and plays with energy, because that Oklahoma State's going to attempt to take something away and they're going to have to adjust, because if they weren't, he's not Mike Gundy if he doesn't have that ability to get his teams to adjust. So I'm with you. Like, they have to figure out how to run the ball. And if it comes down to Sawyer Robertson running the football, because they're taking away the running back run, then let it go. You got to win this game, and it's going to start on the ground in this particular one.
Right. And I actually think the fact that they ran a little bit more off tackle could help as well, because it might give Sawyer some opportunities to run straight. Run right through the middle of the tackles. And that's actually been where he's been the most successful this year. Yeah. Saw it against Colorado, saw it against BYU. I think if you're able to spread the defensive line, spread out the linebackers a little bit, could give them some opportunities in that regard to hit a big player too. And I do think there's going to come a point where they're going to say, Sawyer, we need you to run in this game. And this might be the game for that. It just might be it. So yeah, I think that's a good place to start. My next key, it kind of is in line with this a little bit. It has to do with negative plays. So Oklahoma State is 60th in the nation in tackles for loss. They have 41 on the year. They average 5.9 per game. In their last 4 games, they have 5 sacks and 20 tackles for loss. So they're averaging about a little over a sack and about 5 tackles for loss per game. Baylor is 0-3 on the year when they allow 5 or more tackles for loss. And that just speaks to them getting behind the chains. That speaks to them not necessarily being the best offense when you put them in 3rd and 12, 3rd and 11 type situations, which is pretty common. It's very hard to be a good offense in those situations. And so I do think that's really important, because we talk about the run game, but if on first down you're sitting there and it's now 1st or 2nd and 12, it's really hard to run the football on 2nd and 12. And so I think that if they can avoid those, it'll allow them to stay ahead of the chains, allow them to consistently run the football, also keep the defense off balance with having to deal with the possibility of Baylor running it or passing it. I just think it's a huge kind of data point and something that really could impact this game. And I do believe that Oklahoma State has the talent to make this happen. I think they're more talented than Texas Tech was a week ago, especially in this regard, creating negative plays.
Yeah, Tech was terrible. I mean, and interestingly, Tech did a really good job in rush defense coming into this game in terms of stopping running backs. Yards per carry averages were significantly better than what Oklahoma State's done. But they just didn't create negative plays. You don't get anybody off schedule, you're going to have a hard time getting off the field. Oklahoma State does a better job of that. And in general, I look at Baylor's offensive line. There has been growth in what Jake Spavital has wanted to do since he got on campus, and everywhere he's been is avoid negative plays. There has been an emphasis on that. It's like, if we get behind the chains, like 2nd and 10 is significantly different than 2nd and 12, right? It changes your mindset, even if it's just a perceptual thing. And he has wanted to do that. In the last couple of games, Baylor's done a pretty good job with that. Again, even against the Iowa State game, like, they did a pretty good job of not getting behind the sticks and creating those almost, I don't want to call it hidden yardage, because it's not technically hidden yardage, but it is, because even though you might get 7 yards on 3rd and 12, on 2nd and 12, that only puts you at 3rd and 5. But if you get 7 yards on 2nd and 10, then you're at 3rd and 3, and the playbook opens up a lot. So there is some hidden yards values in that. And Jake Spavital running the ball downhill, avoiding negative plays, not taking sacks. That's what when this offense is going to be at its best, that's what it's going to do. The spread offense in general is to avoid those. It's to negate weaknesses in particular areas. And Baylor has done a good job with that. If they can do it against Oklahoma State, avoid tackles for loss, avoid sacks, I think you have to feel pretty good about where this offense can do, because Oklahoma State, I mean, they've been kind of a wet paper towel in a lot of different areas throughout this entire season, especially in the last 4 games. Now, they've played some pretty good offenses and rushing offenses specifically. Kansas State, West Virginia come to mind. But in general, man, everyone they face, I mean, even in the BYU game, they gave up a lot of yards per carry that BYU has not gotten this year.
Right. And I think that's kind of that speaks to kind of the issues that they've had, right? I mean, that this is how you become a truly bad defense. And so far this year, they have been a truly bad defense. And so a lot of that, again, we've mentioned it. The injuries are tough. I mean, the guys that we've mentioned are literally probably their 3 best defense players, and they have not had them for a large chunk of the season. And it's at all 3 levels. And so it really has impacted them a lot. They have a few other good playmakers. Kendall Daniels is pretty good. And so he might give them something. Yeah, Black's pretty good. Like, they have some guys. And like I said, I think their defensive front actually has some dudes. And that's why you kind of have to be a little bit worried that, hey, you know, maybe Baylor just played above themselves last week and they face Oklahoma State, a team that's pretty established, has played some pretty good teams, and maybe Oklahoma State is up for the test and they're able to get into the backfield and test Baylor in different ways. That's definitely a concern of mine. And truthfully, it's probably the only way that Oklahoma State is actually going to win this game is if their defensive line wins up front.
Yeah, and I think it was Ron Lingyel who was asked about it in his media session earlier this week of the difference between Oklahoma State and Texas Tech. And he said specifically they have 2 guys that are going to be the 2 biggest guys that we've faced this year on the interior of the defensive line. And I don't remember the weights, maybe 340 pounds each or something. They're big. So they're going to have to move them. It's much different than what they faced with against Tech. And even Iowa State to an extent. Iowa State had some bigger guys, but across the board, it seems like Oklahoma State is bigger. And that kind of moves me into my next key is that Oklahoma State, if teams are getting into the red zone against them, they're having success. Red zone touchdown convergence, they're 11th in the Big 12, 66.67%. And Baylor has done a really good job as of late scoring touchdowns in the red zone. They can't worry about kicking field goals. They got to get there. They rank number 2. Baylor's offense does against Power 5 competition at 71% in scoring in the touchdowns in the red zone. So Baylor has to get there, right? Like I think last week talked about once you get there, Tech's going to let you get there, but you've got to score. Well, Oklahoma State, you have to continue to get to the red zone because they've shown that they're going to give up scores in the red zone. And a lot of that comes down to not being able to stop the run and being a bad, in general, defense. But Baylor can't afford to turn the ball over. They can't afford to settle for field goals in this game. They're going to have to get there, and then they're going to have to score. And I've been thoroughly impressed. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's this back and forth of like, is Baylor's offense, we saw it last year, it's like they can move the ball up and down the field, but they get into the 20s and then they shoot themselves in the foot. I haven't seen much of that this year. And it does speak to these stats of like, once they're getting there, one, Sawyer Robertson has shown the ability to make plays in the red zone, score touchdowns, but it's also you get that first and goal at the 1, right? Or the 10, and you're able to just run the football in. And that's something they haven't been able to do. They did it against Tech where they're able to run the football in. So I think there's this building confidence of if we're down there, we can score. You just can't turn the ball in this particular game over. And maybe this goes back towards turnovers, but get to the red zone, don't turn it over, and you're going to have the opportunity to score touchdowns because Oklahoma State has struggled in those areas.
Right. And I think that as someone who covers Baylor, you know, you watch the Josh Cameron punt return and you're like, please get in the end zone.
Yes, exactly.
You're like, oh no, here comes a false start, or here comes, you know what I mean? It's kind of been like that for the past couple of years. And instead they just inside zone touchdown, you know, really easy. They just took care of business. Bryson Washington is like 3 yards into the end zone. So yeah, I think that has been a very encouraging area. Sawyer Robertson's accuracy when the field has shrunk and condensed has been super impressive. I mean, that's really tough to do without a bunch of game reps. And he hasn't had that many game reps, and he's doing it at a pretty high level. We talked about that throw to Josh Cameron where he looks off his first 2 reads, comes back to the right, hits Josh Cameron right by the linebacker's hand. I mean, it was just a perfectly thrown football. And that's what you need in the red zone because things get much more congested and you got to be accurate with the ball. So very impressed by that. Gives them a great shot to score once they get there. I do think Oklahoma State is a little bit less bend but don't break. You know, Tech is like full in, like, we're going to play bend but don't break defense. We're going to let you get all on the field. Yeah. And then we're going to force you to kick a field goal or try to go for it on fourth down. That did not work out for them against Baylor. Oklahoma State, on the other hand, they're a little more willing to play some man. They're a little more willing to play some tight man coverage. They're a little more willing to say, we'll give up a 50-yard touchdown. They're more willing to give up those type of explosive plays. Baylor still has to be consistent, but I think this kind of leads into my last key to the game, and that's creating explosive plays. I think that Oklahoma State is going to have to do a lot of things to try to stop Baylor from running the football because they simply have not been able to stop the run much at all. I think that's going to put them in situations where they're going to have to put out, single coverage on Baylor receivers, or maybe only have one high safety or something along those lines where they're giving Baylor chances in one-on-one matchups. Baylor's got to be able to hit on those and create those 20-plus yard explosive plays. I think that's going to be very, very important in this matchup. It's also going to be important when we talk about the defense, because Oklahoma State, I think, is going to try to create some of their own. But for Baylor, you got to be able to hit those explosives. That will help set up the run game and force Oklahoma State to play a little more honest. Because I think initially they're going to try to start off with having more guys in the secondary. I believe Baylor's going to run the football against that, force Oklahoma State to have to bring more guys in the box. And then that's where Sora Robertson and these receivers are going to have to make plays deep down the field.
Yeah. And Oklahoma State, like every statistic that we talk about right now, they're not a good defensive team. And this is an area that they have struggled in defensively. 20-plus yard plays, no matter play, rushing or passing, 16th given up in 20-yard plays against Power 5 competition. 30-yard pass plays, 16th. 10-yard rushes. Yeah, 10-plus yard rushes, 16th. Every single area in those particular categories they are struggling with. And Baylor has to take advantage. And on the flip side, Baylor has been pretty good at a clip of creating 20-plus yard plays, and they're going to be there. In red zone, once you get into the red zone, they struggle. It's almost kind of, I don't want to say Baylor can pick and choose the game plan they want to have, because I think Oklahoma State's going to work on taking something away. They're going to have to figure out early in this game what they are taking away and then adjust to it. You don't know what guys are getting back on defense, but in general, like one guy, like you can't go into this game and beat yourself, I guess is the end of the day. Like Oklahoma State's shown throughout the season. I mean, you look back to the Arkansas game, you look back to, I think they did decently against Tulsa, which Tulsa's not a great offensive team, but they've shown it all season that they're going to struggle. And even dating back to last year, truthfully, they won 10 games last year, but they were not a great statistical defense. They flourished in some areas, but they were not a great defensive team. So this is kind of just compounded this year. Now they're not winning games because their offense is able to score points. And that leads me to my final key, and this is an off the field thing, but it's like this offense cannot get flat. I mean, they cannot come in flat and be content with what happened last week against Texas Tech. Like you score 59 points, that's impressive, but you've only won 3 games. You got to go out and win 3 more games. And if they can come out and play with fire and energy, which I'm excited that this game is at home, because I think it's like they have now, that's the next carrot. That's the next carrot in front of them. It's like going and winning a home game, winning 2 games in a row. We haven't done that since 2022. So now can we as in the Baylor football team, we beat Tech last week. Now can we go and beat a second consecutive Big 12 team this week? They haven't won 2 consecutive games, no matter the competition, since 2022, which is crazy to think about. There's just a lot. There's still more carrots out there. They have to find the motivation to go out and play well and play energized in this game and not relax. We saw that kind of on the different end of the spectrum after the Colorado game. They came out of that game just flat, possibly because of what happened in the Colorado game. On the opposite hand, they can't come out of this game relaxed. They have to come out tense and ready to play against Oklahoma State, because Oklahoma State's back's up against the wall and they're going to come out swinging. Now, how many times do they swing before they fall down and get knocked out? That's up to what Baylor does in this game.
I agree with that. I will say, going into last week, I felt like Baylor was going to have a lot of success on offense. And I think this game sets up really well for them to have success on offense as well. But I will say I have a little more of an uneasy feeling about this matchup. And I don't know why, because Oklahoma State defensively has been really, really bad this year. But there is just something in the back of my head that, knowing the Oklahoma State roster, knowing some of the talent they have, and knowing the matchup problems that they might have, it is something that I'm keeping an eye on. I also think that there is a part of me that's just looking back at how Baylor has fared at home in conference play. And they have not won in their last 8 games, 0-8, 3-10 at home since the beginning of 2022. I mentioned this on our website, but Baylor fans have not left a game at McLean Stadium, a home game at McLean Stadium, with a win in over 2 years. I mean, it has been really, really tough, and that's what makes this game so important. We can talk about making a bowl game. We can talk about, what it may mean for season-long implications and things like that. But we can always point to something, right? We can say, oh, but Houston, you still get to play Houston and Kansas, and that makes up for it. But winning games at home, on homecoming, in front of your home fans is very, very important for the health of a program. And I think this is a big one for that reason. And I expect Baylor to fully show up and fully take advantage of the moment. But I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a little bit of an uneasy feeling.
Yeah, I think that's natural because of what we've seen. And really, if you go into those games, it's kind of like the expectations are so low that you're just waiting for something bad to happen. I think that some of that got shaken off with the win over Tech, but it needs to happen at home. It has to happen at home. And that's for as much about the team as it is about the fans. The fans need that in the worst kind of way. So with all of that, that's kind of our keys to the game. And now we're going to get to visit with Coach Spavital and talk to him for the first time in a long time and visit with him about his offense and what he's doing in year one after that 59-point performance. Anything that you're excited to ask Coach Spavital and what you're anxious to hear from him in this interview?
Really excited to ask him about Sawyer Robertson. I mean, he's got a great track record with quarterbacks, has coached a bunch of NFL players at that position, and just seeing how Sawyer has grown, in the time that he's been there. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I'm curious about, because that's Spavital's specialty, is the quarterback position. So I'm excited to kind of dive a little bit deeper on that.
Yeah. With that said, here's our interview with Baylor offensive coordinator Jake Spavital. So Grace and I are now joined by Baylor offensive coordinator Jake Spavital. Coach, how's it going? Obviously had a practice this morning. I hope all that went well for you.
Yeah, everything's going good. Just in that kind of middle of the season grind right now. So it's had a good practice this morning, and I think our guys are ready to go out there and hopefully put on a show for this homecoming crowd this weekend.
Okay. So, Coach, clearly the bye week worked some wonders for y'all. You had a really, really good week against Texas Tech. What was the focus during that week, and how do you feel like it transferred to the game?
Yeah, it really starts just back in the Tarleton State game. Like week by week by week, all we've been preaching is about getting better and just doing the little things right. And finally, we had a game, and it happened to come after a bye week where we actually put it all together and played a relatively clean game, which if you go back to that Tarleton State game, we had all sorts of penalties and negative plays and a lot of just missed assignments and errors that were on us. And you go into this last game, and we didn't have any negative plays. We didn't have any turnovers. We had 3 penalties that we overcame. So they're starting to understand, what it takes to play clean, efficient football. And, it isn't fun going into a bye week being 2-4, and especially after a tough loss. But you got to give these guys credit. They show up every single day. They want to win. They care. And you see the results as a coach each week. And I was just very happy for them and pleased that they put it all together in a game. And now they understand what it looks like and what we're capable of doing. And let's see if we can continue to get better throughout this week. And hopefully we can really have a similar result of what we did versus Texas Tech.
What would you say in the run game, the biggest difference was from those first 6 games to this Texas Tech game? Was it just basically clean football, or was there something that clicked with the offensive line, with the running backs, and they all kind of gelled together for this game?
I think, we had some off-tackle stuff that we hadn't been doing much of. We've been practicing it for a couple of weeks just to make sure that we weren't, too fired up for it. But that bye week did help with establishing some new run schemes. And, I give Sawyer Robinson credit. He did check into a lot of those plays that we worked on and got us into the right look. And, just seeing B-Wash and just the O-line and Dawson and Richard Reese have success running the football, it fired me up. It makes play calling a lot easier. I can tell you that when the run game is established. So I was excited just to see how they rushed for, I forgot what it was, like 250 yards or so, something like around there. But just to have that success and be just a balanced offense, I think the culmination of just the bye week and just, working on things over the past few weeks just added up and Sawyer getting us in the right looks and the rest of them just playing hard and having some explosive runs for us.
So Coach Sawyer Robertson has been the guy now for a little over a month. Where have you seen the biggest growth from him since you arrived to where he is now?
Yeah, he's an impressive guy, man. Just, the approach that he has, he's such a great teammate. When he got delivered the news that he wasn't the starter at the beginning of the year, a lot of kids would, look to maybe transfer, look just for excuses or just, you're going into kind of like really roughly your last season. That's the fifth time he's been told that he wasn't the starting quarterback. And, just to see him, how great of a teammate he was and how he encouraged, people throughout those first two games, how he prepared like he was going to be the starter. And just going into that Air Force game, I was just so fired up for him because I knew he was going to play great because of the amount of work that he puts into it. And he has that great success versus Air Force, and then you just see him start to build off of it. He works on his pocket presence. He works on the checks. He watches a ton of tape. It's just been a pleasure to coach. It just reminds me of some of the great quarterbacks I've had in the past, of the work ethic and just that the intangibles of being a great teammate. And I think the team, he provided a spark that was needed for us on offense. And right now he's playing very efficient. I think he's one of the top, I think he's leading the Big 12 and he's top 10 nationally in terms of QBR. So that just shows that he's doing the right thing and putting our team in the best position to win.
Yeah. So you look at your receiver room, and obviously you guys have a bunch of guys running around out there, and obviously Ketron not being out there against Texas Tech, but you didn't miss a beat, right? Like, it just felt like every single game there's a new guy stepping up. I know Josh has been pretty consistent, but it doesn't seem like defenses can focus in on one specific receiver. Is that always the game plan? I mean, obviously you don't want to tip your hand to anyone, but it seems like every single game there's somebody else that's stepping up.
Yeah, I give credit to that room. They work well together. They're selfless. There's a lot of talent, I believe, in that room. But if you just sacrifice for the team, your moment's going to come where you're going to end up having big time catches. And Josh is a great example of that. He's a guy that if you told him to go in and play left tackle, he'd go and play left tackle right now.
He probably could.
He probably could, and I always tell him that he's not allowed to lead the game because he's just always consistent. And he came out for one play in the Texas Tech game, which we've been all kind of getting after him a little bit because I think he's literally played every single play since the Air Force game, on offense, which is a testament to who he is. But you got Hal Presley, he's playing at a high level as well. And then Monterey and Ashton, those guys are very multiple. Ashton was playing outside with Tron out, and Ashton was dominating out there, which was good to see. So it's a comfort for Sawyer as well. And with those four guys, he's just he any position that they're in, he's very comfortable in what they can do and in their skill set. But then you also throw in Michael Trigg as well. And Trigg is a very dynamic receiver body type as well. So we've got five guys in there right now that we're leaning on heavy. And I think after the success they've kind of had over the past couple of weeks, you can kind of see the confidence that they're having in there, and they're excited to get back out there again on Saturday.
You had to play a few of the best defenses in the Big 12 to start this season, and you had to go play them on the road too. Do you think that helped prepare y'all for this Texas Tech game? And then, of course, what you're going to see going forward?
Yeah, I think you can't take anything for granted ever, just because, preseason rankings, I just kind of laugh at because you don't even know what type of team you have, because the transfer portal and all the moving parts. But those defenses were pretty stout, and I think they, when you go up against Utah and BYU and Iowa State, they're just kind of, they're all different types of defenses, but they're very efficient. They're very good at what they do. And I think that's kind of been also a thing that's made Sawyer grow because he's seen a lot of different looks, the three high safety shell versus Iowa State, to a lot of man press, in the Utah game, to a mixture of everything. Like in BYU, I thought we had them off a little bit where they got into a lot of drop 8 coverage in the game, and that shows like how Sawyer was dialed in. But I think you look at this Oklahoma State team. I think they're very talented. They're just beat up right now in terms of just injuries, but like they're very good with their scheme. They've always been a good program. They're a top 25 preseason national team. So we got another challenge, and I think the Big 12 every week you got to bring it to a certain extent. I just thought. With the tough defenses that we played early and the bye week, man, it was a good opportunity for us to go out there and be ready for all the looks that Tim DeRuyter and Texas Tech defense threw at us.
Yeah, going back to the running game for a second, you mentioned running more off tackle outside stuff. How does that help the run game now that that's on film for the upcoming opponents? Obviously, it's something that you hadn't shown much in the first 6 games. Now it's on film. How does that help you? And is it something that you can do multiple things off of because you've run that in this particular game against Tech?
Yeah, it makes the linebackers play more honest, because like I'm a big downhill run game believer. And like we've had a lot of moving parts up front. We've had injuries and like we've played, like, I think 8 offensive linemen. We still play a lot right now. Yeah. But if they can get a beat on what you're trying to do in the run game, they can take it out with a lighter box. And then once you start having multiple runs where you can go off tackle and to go downhill, and that's something that we've been working on for a while. And finally we got like something that we're comfortable with on the off tackle stuff. So now it's going to make defenses play a little bit more honest. When we played like Utah and Colorado and even BYU in some instances, and Texas Tech at times, they would just load the box and play man press because they can kind of take away, and dictate where the ball was going to hit. So when we started hitting those off tackle plays, man, it got them out of their game plan pretty quickly. So with it being on tape, it's definitely going to be something that defense has got to prepare for in the future.
You talked about Oklahoma State being a pretty talented team and obviously a really good program as well. What has kind of been the focus for y'all this week coming off that Tech game as you kind of get prepared for what you're going to see from the Cowboys?
Yeah, and again, it's been crazy, how we've been talking. I normally talk about the opponent and all of that, throughout the beginning, the first 7 games. But now it's just we mention Oklahoma State, we talk about it, we show the looks, but it's more about us and the demeanor that we play with, the attention to detail, and how clean up football we do. Because we do a slide at the beginning of every unit meeting on Sunday after a game, just when we call it the controllable slides, and things that we can control, like communication errors or just missed assignments or penalties pre and post snap, and kind of like our effort and just kind of simple execution plays. And when you look at the games we struggle at are the ones where we beat ourselves. And when we take pride in just worrying about the little things and the details and just the discipline of things, man, good things happen. But with Oklahoma State, they know that this is a great team. They know that they're going through some injuries. They've lost like you go in the West Virginia game versus Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State had their whole D line out. Now they have some safeties out. They have a lot of missing parts, but they're moving back. They're getting healthier and they're back. And Ollie Gordon was playing well, but then they had their quarterback get injured last week. And Alan Bowman, which is crazy to say, I played Alan Bowman in 2018 when I was at West Virginia. That's which is crazy, but yeah, it's these guys know that we got a tough test ahead of us. We're showing them the looks, but they also know that our biggest issue is ourselves. And if we just keep working on us and showing up with good intentions and a sacrifice and a selflessness and play with the effort and the physicality needed and not beat ourselves, and good things will happen.
Yeah. So my last question for you, and it goes to the offensive line, the one position that's kind of been rotating quite a bit. You mentioned this just a minute ago, playing guys, but Sidney Fugar looks like he's been the guy at left tackle the last couple of games. What have you seen from his performance? And obviously he came from South Carolina where he played tackle. They moved to guard for you. Now he's back at tackle. What does he bring to that position? I know he's a big guy, athletic. How is he as the coach? How is he as a player? Is he learning that position more and more? What is it about him that's made him kind of fit in at that left tackle position?
Yeah, Sidney's been great, man. He's always got a smile on his face, but he's a very angry guy when he plays, and like you're saying, he's a massive guy. He's played left tackle, right tackle. We got him left guard. We got him back out of left tackle. When he gets his hands on people, he moves them, Coach Miller, I give him credit. He's just a guy that's been putting together, for Mike Leach over the years, just good offensive lines. And he pays attention to it. He moves them around. And I thought that was kind of a spark needed up front. is when we moved Sydney to left tackle, and it just allowed for bigger bodies that we can move. And like, as crazy it is for him, man, like he's like 300 and like, 40, 50 pounds. He's a massive guy, but like he can move extremely well. And he's got the old school face mask with the bar right down the middle of the, so it just kind of adds on to who he is, man. But he's a pleasure to coach and be around, and everybody loves him in the facility, and he's getting better every single day, as you guys can tell. And just having Sydney out there, and just, and that continuity is starting to get cleaner and cleaner every single day that they're out there together.
You've coached a lot of really good offenses during your time coaching. Is there a common thread between those offenses that you've seen as the season progresses, as far as, what steps they're taking to become a truly great offense by the end of the year? And can this Baylor offense, do you think, get to that?
Yeah. I think we get better every single game, and like the challenge all week, really for like 6 weeks of like, it was like, hey, we're going to win a game on offense. All right. And it takes work. It takes, the sacrifice, and you just got to keep chipping away. And once they, I feel like they're hitting a rhythm right now where they understand how things work. They understand spacing and alignments and coverages and grass and what to get to, and the tempo and that we play with. And, normally, the best offenses I've had year 2, they go crazy. But right now it's just like one day at a time, 1 week at a time. And let's just keep building off of, what we've done, just recognize the good and be critical of the bad and just keep improving. And I think they've just kind of bought into it, and it was so pleasing for me as a coach to see them have success versus Texas Tech, because of all of the hard conversations and the ups and downs and just us chipping away. It finally showed it. And now they have more energy, and they're excited to get back to work. They know that they're not perfect and they got a long ways to go, but they're out there, fighting and trying to get after it every single day, because they know that they can keep improving each day. So, that's typically a good sign of an offense, is that they continue to play, and you want to be playing your best ball at the end of the season. And I think that they've improved week by week.
Coach, really appreciate your time today. Good luck this weekend against Oklahoma State, and I look forward to visiting with you again in the future.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you guys. Sick 'em.
Thanks, Coach.